welcome back to Christian Weather Broadcasting. Today we're going to be doing a forecast video on Hurricane Milton, the major Category 5 hurricane which is making its way towards Florida. Luckily, it will not be a Category 5 when it makes landfall in Florida, but it is forecast to be a Category 3. But we'll get into the details of this storm in just a second, but before we do, I need to tell you this. Repent and put your faith in Jesus, because only He can save you from hell. We have sinned, so we deserve hell, but Jesus can save you because He died on a cross for us. And if you repent and put your faith in Him, He will save you. Alrighty, everybody, that is good news. Now, let's get right into the news about Hurricane Milton. Let's go. Alrighty, this is the satellite imagery here, and as you can see, Hurricane Milton has a very well-defined eye and very cold cloud tops around the storm. Despite this, it is weakening, and we know it is weakening based on, obviously, the fact that the wind speeds have gone down and the pressure has come up, and we have seen that in the, aircraft reconnaissance data. So despite this very fantastic appearance on satellite imagery, it is starting to weaken as we expected before landfall. Still a very powerful hurricane, and it will still be very powerful, though just not as powerful, but still, again, very powerful. So right now, you're looking at a Category 5 hurricane moving towards Florida, but we will expect landfall to be at around Category 3 with 125-mile-an-hour winds by the time it reaches Florida. I also want to bring you to windy.com, and I want to show you the satellite imagery from Windy. Now, here's another telltale sign we don't have a rapidly intensifying or intensifying system. You don't see any lightning around the center. Last night, this thing was blown up with lightning. There was a lot of lightning around it, and that's because it was rapidly intensifying. We don't see any lightning, except maybe one strike in this storm, but it's not as nonstop as it was, so this thing is going to continue to weaken. It's showing signs, and it is weakening, so it's not going to strengthen anymore. But speaking of lightning, there's this little blobby. It's not over land, but talk about lightning and that little thing. It's just constant bursts of lightning. There's a little blobby there. It's not a tropical system, but I think it's part of Milton. But either way, it's funny. I wanted to point that out just for fun. But let's bring you to the National Hurricane Center. As you can see, we have another hurricane out in the Atlantic. But luckily, this is not going to affect any land, and it's just spinning up out there. Category 1 hurricane, 80-mile-an-hour wind, 97 millibar pressure. But let's go to the main storm we need to talk about, and that is Hurricane Milton. Currently, maximum sustained winds are at 160 miles per hour, minimum central pressure of 915 millibars, Category 5 hurricane, movement northeast at 10 knots or 12 miles per hour. These are our key messages, and since we're on a live stream, I will be able to go over these. Large area of destructive storm surge with highest inundations of 10 feet or greater is expected along portion of west central coast of the Florida Peninsula. If you are in the storm surge warning area, this is an extremely life-threatening situation, and you should evacuate as soon as possible if ordered by local officials. There will likely not be enough time to wait to leave on Wednesday, so this is very important. If you live in a flood zone and you've been told to evacuate, evacuate, because you can't escape water when it's already above you. You can, though, run from the wind, you need to run from the water. You can hide from the wind. Devastating hurricane-force winds are expected along portions of the west coast of Florida, where a hurricane warning is in effect. Milton is forecast to remain a hurricane while it crosses the Florida Peninsula. And life-threatening hurricane-force winds, especially in gusts, that's interesting, are expected to spread inland across the peninsula. Preparations to protect life and property, including being ready for long-duration power outages, should be rushed to completion. Long-duration power outages. That is an important note there. I believe there's still a lot of linemen up in North Carolina, as the last disaster we had was Hurricane Milton, so I believe that could be why. I could be wrong, but I believe that may be why they put that in there, is because there may not be time. Of course, I could be completely wrong on that, but that's just my opinion, my idea. And finally, we have this keynote here. Heavy rainfall across the Florida Peninsula through Thursday brings the risk of catastrophic and life-threatening flash and urban flooding, along with moderate to major river flooding in especially areas where coastal and inland flooding combined to increase the overall flood threat. So there is a chance of flooding. Now let's bring you to the cone of uncertainty. And I was watching a video of a pastor who was talking about praying for the people in the path of the storm. He called it the cone of danger. I want to correct this notion. This cone here, or something like that, I don't want to mess up what he actually said, but this cone here, this is just where the possibility of the center goes. The center is that lowest pressure point inside the system. So the center could go all the way up here, or it could go way down south near Cape Coral. Or the center could go right in the middle of those. But that's only the center. As you can see the wind field here, and this wind field is going to expand once this thing gets closer to land, and especially once it makes landfall, as these hurricanes do that. When they make landfall, that wind field expands, but the effects are going to be outside of the cone of uncertainty. The cone of uncertainty is only where this little tiny well, not tiny, but little tiny minimum central pressure area is. That's just one little spot. The area where we're going to see effects of the storm expands outside of this hurricane. And I want to bring you now to the experimental cone to give an idea of where these tropical storm warnings and watches are. You can see down here, I believe this is the dry Tortugas. Hurricane watch and tropical storm warning are in effect in those areas. You can see in the Bahamas, tropical storm warnings, obviously, because this thing's going to be crossing Florida as a hurricane, so bringing tropical storm force winds into those areas. We have tropical storm force, warnings all the way down as far as the Keys. You can see these right here are hurricane warnings, but it's as well. But those are starting pretty far down south. Giant swath of hurricane warning. Some more up here. All the way up into Apalachicola, tropical storm force wind warning, tropical storm watches now for like Tallahassee area, all the way almost to Charleston. So these, the warnings from this system are very widespread. So let's go to our wind speed probabilities, as you wonder what's the probability of seeing wind speed from this thing. Well, 90% chance of tropical storm force winds where the landfall of this thing is going to occur. 80-90% chance across the peninsula of Florida. You can see tropical storm force winds 50% plus in some, 40% plus round to Daytona. Up here in Jacksonville, gusts are forecast to be above, tropical storm force wind in this area. And I should probably check down here, but I'd assume similar. Except for Jacksonville and St. Augustine, even maybe as far south as Daytona, these are on the dirty side, so that's where the storms are. But Orlando, I believe, is also going to get some of those strong winds. And of course, obviously, where the landfall of this thing's going to happen, and it's right now, center track is leaving over Melbourne. Those areas are going to get the worst of the wind. Hurricane wind force probability right now only at a 60 to 70% chance, but again, as we have seen with these wind speed probabilities, they always update, and that'll be a 90% chance of hurricane force winds by the time this thing gets close. Now, we do need to talk about storm surge, because there is going to be some bad storm surge from this system. You can see Indian Pass to Swanee River, around 1 to 3 feet, 2 to 4 feet from Swanee River to Arapeka, if I pronounced that right. we're going to be seeing Anclote to Arapeka River area, 5 to 8 feet, which is very bad. 2 to 4 feet can even be pretty bad. Tampa Bay, 10 to 15 feet. That is above the first story of your house. Very bad storm surge. Charlotte Harbor, 8 to 12 feet, all the way down to like Boca Grande. We're experiencing those massive 10 plus storm surge probabilities. Bonita Beach area, 8 to 12. I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce this area. I don't want to butcher it, but look at that. 3 to 5 feet. Dry Tortugas, 2 to 4 feet. All the way down to the Keys, 1 to 3 feet. And interestingly enough, on this storm, we're also getting a lot of storm surge because, well, I guess of, the track going basically that way, and the winds pushing this way, we are going to experience storm surge on the Atlantic side of Florida. As you can see, 1 to 3 feet Palm Beach to Sebastian Inlet. 1 to 3 feet Sebastian Inlet is where it starts to getting into that 3 to 5 feet area, which extends quite far up, and then 2 to 4 feet in Georgia. Edisto Beach to the South Santee River in South Carolina are getting 1 to 3 feet, and the St. Johns River is going to possibly experience up to 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. So if you live in an area that floods, be safe, and definitely, if your house is flooded before, be careful, and obviously make sure your stuff is in a good place, because you do not want water on your possessions. Move them. It's better to have them upstairs than downstairs where they're destroyed. And of course, do not drive through water. That is the most dangerous thing you can do because you don't know how dangerous that water is. Rainfall potential. There is obviously potential for rainfall. Where the center track of this thing is going, 12 to 16 inches, so plenty of rain. And in this swath where it's going, on average 8 to 12 it looks like in this whole area, with those spots of 12 to 16 inches of rain. And with that brings flash flooding potential. As you can see, Tampa Bay up to Orlando, high, at least 70% chance of flash flooding. South Florida looking at a slight chance. North Florida in Jacksonville looking at a slight chance. Parts of North Florida, though, maybe St. Augustine down to around Daytona looking at a moderate chance, and Georgia, further north into Florida and parts of Georgia, marginal chance of flash flooding. Now, we've talked about rain. We've also talked about wind. Now, when are you going to see the winds arrive? Arrival time of winds by Wednesday, 2 p.m. So Wednesday afternoon, those tropical storm force winds will be moving on into Florida. By Wednesday, 8 p.m., they're moving into the center of Florida. And by Thursday, 8 a.m., those tropical storm force winds have moved into Florida and are starting to extend outwards, and are starting to arrive in to other places such as the Bahamas. Those areas are going to start by Thursday, 8 a.m., experiencing the beginning of tropical storm force winds. So, that is what we are seeing with Hurricane Milton. If you guys are watching this and have any questions, I will take them right now. Let me get on the live stream to make sure nobody has any questions. If you have a question, ask it right now, and I will answer it. I'll give you till 11:30, and then we'll end the stream. Again, if you have a question and you are watching, do please ask, and I will do my best at answering. Again, if you are watching, please ask a question if you need to, and I will answer. Alrighty, it is 11:30. I do not think we have any questions, so I am going to end the stream. Thank you for watching. This has been my live stream on Hurricane Milton. Expect further updates from me in the future. Thank you for watching. This has been Christian Weather Broadcasting.